Welcome back to the Crypto Rainn channel. I'm your host, Jay Murph. So, technical analysis day. I know you've been waiting for this. And many months back, for those who've been around the channel for a long time, you know that I had my friend Angel, who was exceptional at technical analysis, but he took on 3 jobs while trying to do everything, so we weren't able to continue coordinating our schedules. And I love him very much, but through some connections in the past month, I met somebody who's truly amazing, and he comes very strongly recommended. In fact, he's been in this space for a long time. He's done technical analysis on all different types of trading, and he's on loan to us from DeFinity to come to the audience and share with you kind of his thoughts on what's going on. I'm very excited to have him here because we're going to go through some of our tokens. They're our favorites, and have him look at it with his technical analysis background. So wanted to welcome on Paul Rodriguez. Let me bring him in. Paul, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you very much for that intro. That's very kind of you. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you. You come very highly recommended. I know Manu from DeFinity completely believes in everything that you say because he's seen it and known you over the years, and on how good you are. So his recommendation was very strong.
Thank you. Yeah, I just try to be honest with what I see. You know, I get things wrong, and I'm honest about that. I try to call it when I see something that I really like and I want to get off my chair and shout about it. I try to let you know, and when I'm not sure, I'll let you know as well. So, I will just do my best to be as honest as I can with what I'm seeing right now. And sometimes things look great, and sometimes they don't. So I'll just be honest with that. So yes, thank you.
Yeah, we love that. At the end of the day, we understand that technical analysis is just dealing in probabilities because you don't know exactly the way it'll break out. It just gives you indications on what the chances are different things will happen. So we're very excited to have you on the channel. I would say my technical analysis skills on a scale of 1 to 10 are maybe about a 4 or a 5. So it's fantastic to have you here to give our viewers just with a much stronger background and idea of what you're reading in the charts. So I would love it if you'd tell the audience a little bit about your background, and then if it's okay with you, we'd go through some of the tokens that we've been following closely on the channel.
Absolutely. Well, I started out in the financial markets pretty much possibly like a lot of the listeners here and part of your audience, not really knowing anything about how to trade or how to follow the market. So I was trading with a friend of mine back in the early 90s, if you can believe that. And I just put money in the market and hoped that it went up and just closed my eyes. And we won positions. And if it went up, we took our profit, and it went down, we just held it. And we lost, but we made money to start with, and then we lost money. And I realized I didn't know what I was doing. And I asked people about technical analysis, and they said, oh, don't look at that stuff, that's all nonsense. And I was like, I think I'll do my own research, thank you. So I learned all I could about technical analysis, and then my trading with my friend turned around completely. We started to make money. And I absolutely loved it. And I was working at a bank at the time, and I wanted to make it my career. So I took a course at the City University in London, which I eventually ended up taking over and teaching other professionals about how to analyze and trade the financial markets. So without going into too much history, I worked for a couple of leading investment banks and set up my own my own training company, Think Trading, because that really got going in the late 90s, early 2000s, when there were many investors who were getting into the dot-com boom. And I could see that there were many people who really didn't understand how the markets worked. And I just thought, look, they're going to lose money. We didn't teach them how to trade. And I quite honestly, I like to teach people more than I like to give my views, because you are absolutely right. Your view can change once past because the probabilities change. And when you learn how to read the charts, you know what signs are telling you that things change. So that's why I love to give my view, but I love also to educate, do it themselves, to know what to look for themselves. So when the probabilities change, they know exactly what to look for. So my style of technical analysis is very much chart reading. My personal view is that you can overload your chart with too many oscillators, too many indicators, too many lines, too many moving averages, which I did as well. You know, you end up creating a mush on your screen. You don't know whether to buy or sell. And it's the price action, in my view, that determines where everything else is going to read anyway. So if you're looking at an oscillator, that's determined by the price action. If you're looking at a moving average, that's determined by the price action. So many other analysts are looking at the oscillators as though they are the most important thing, but clearly they're not. The market is the most important thing. So start with the market. If you want to put in oscillators or moving averages or things like that, that's up to you, but sprinkle them in very, very gently. Don't put too much on, otherwise you can confuse yourself. Now, everybody has a different way of doing things. Some people like Elliott wave, which can be quite complicated. Some people like very simple oscillators with other signals. I wouldn't necessarily to do it in a certain way. They have to find the way that works for them. But I would recommend that you start with simple price reading. And I think given how much you've already looked at the markets, probably a much better chart reader. Well, my experience is people are very good at reading charts. What they aren't good at is believing in their own view. So they don't have the courage of their convictions. They're probably much better than they realize. So part of what I try to do is encourage people to try themselves and see how they get on, and just to point them in the right directions of what they might start to look at. So we can do that as we go along in the charts, and I can explain what I'm looking at. But I would say one of the first things to do is to try and get as much data as you possibly can for the market that you're trading. And I know some of the coins that you're trading are very, very new, so there might not be very much data at all. But that's okay. You've got to deal with what's in front of you. There's nothing you can do about that. But if you're looking at some of the other markets, they've been around for a long time. It's better to get lots of data, because that helps you put it in perspective. Is the market in an upward trend? Is it range bound? Has it hit a new high? Has it hit high, all-time high? Was it a high for the year? So all those questions are very important, and you should try to answer those before you start getting into the nitty-gritty of where the market's going to go next.
Agreed. How do you feel about us just jumping into maybe starting with the big players like
Love
Bitcoin?
to. Yeah, I'm sure people would much rather look at the charts rather than hear me talk about me, which I really usually don't like doing. But look, just again, thank you for inviting me on, and this is going to be a lot of fun because I do enjoy looking at charts, and I like people who like doing the same. Now, in terms of probability, we should start really with Bitcoin. And I'll be honest with you, I was looking at this as a major, what we call head and shoulders top, which would be a corrective trade. And the probabilities around here, I was thinking, look, this could break this low and we could get a massive correction. But I'm still long-term really bullish on all the cryptocurrencies. I really am. I think we're going to see in 2022, we're going to see all-time highs everywhere, because this is just the beginning of a massive wave of technology that most people just haven't woken up to. So you're really ahead of the curve in even talking about this stuff now. But it's just a question of whether we're going to get a big correction before the markets go into new highs. So I was looking for a correction here. The market went up, and I was willing to give it a bit of space, because this could just be a rebound before it goes down, but it's taken out some key levels along the way. And what I like to do is look at Fibonacci levels. Now, Fibonacci levels, without going into too much detail, we look at the 38.2% retracement, the 50% half, which is quite easy to understand, and the 61.8% retracement to look for what would be resistance levels as the market is rallying. Now, something else I look for is not only how the market retraces, it's what does the price action do? Does it hit the high and then come straight off with a really strong move, or does it hit the high and just sort of hang around? And what we're seeing here is, like, look at this price action here. It's just hanging around. It's not pulling back. So this looks like it's going to wind up for another move. And I'm guessing that if we can take this high out, this little packet of price action here, it could puncture up and head towards 54,000. Now, if it does that, I would still say this could be in a correction, and we're still within this range. See, because it's made a high, it's made an important low, it's retracing that, but that's not enough for us to get really excited about 100,000. Not quite yet. We can wait for proper confirmation before we start talking about some really big numbers. So week on week, I think this will push upwards. Now, where this is wrong would be basically, if it can get below 46 as a big level, then this is pivoting back down, and I would expect 28 and possibly my original targets down at 20 before we get this rally into 2022. But at the moment, we're going to take this one step at a time and say this is really solid price action. It's doing extremely well and much better than I thought it would. And we also have to look at some of the other coins. Some of the other coins have been leading the way. Now, I've expected Bitcoin to lag because I think the market is really excited about new technology. And I was hoping that we'd get a big correction in Bitcoin, big correction in some of the other markets, and then everything would turn back up and it will be led by these other coins. Now, it seems like the market's a little too eager. So if we go to Ethereum, you can see that little consolidation that we've got in Bitcoin, which is what we're looking at here. This is already punctured up. It's already broken higher. Now, this is a very sharp move. You see, upward trend, consolidation, upward trend. Now, the way that is moving, it's moved so far from what would be a reversal pattern that the market's gunning for that high. It's going for that 4,500 high on this particular chart. And I would say that as long as this 3,000 level, just below 3,000 holds, you've got to stay bullish on this, actually. So, I was skeptical last week because I thought everything's going to correct. Bitcoin's really not trading that positively, and this was edging towards this support, and some of the equity markets looked like they were going to come off, and all those things put together would suggested caution. But this has broken out really nicely, and you can't ignore that at all. It may come back for a retest on the previous resistance. So if we look at how it broke it tried to break it there, failed, tried to break it here, then failed, came back up again, and now it's pushed all the way through, punctured through as though it's not there. So what we look for is support and resistance and key breakout levels. So we know there's been strong buying there because it's rallied so aggressively. The support level to watch out for on a pullback would just be around here, depending on what your chart's reading. That's around 3,370. So as long as it can hold that support very short term, this is looking good. And it probably won't break this high in one go, but it's certainly having a good crack at it. You've got to give it credit for how well that's trading. So short term on Bitcoin, I'm going to be a little more reserved. But on this, I think this is really trying to take the high out. So I'd be week on week bullish. And certainly on the spread against Bitcoin, I think it's a buy. Shall I go to the next?
Yeah, let's take a look at Cardano. That's definitely one of our channel favorites.
Right. Now this is, again, this was a similar setup. I was looking at this head and shoulders pattern, which failed to break. Now, failed patterns can still be good trades, right? Because what you're saying is exactly as you said at the top of the show. When there's a probability, it's like, is this going to go over the edge of the cliff? Well, if it doesn't go over the edge of the cliff, it's not the trade. So if it's not going to go down, then there's only one way for it to go, and that's up. So look at how this is traded. I mean, it's just been quite incredible. Now, I look for short-term consolidation patterns that are called flags and pennants. Now, the name pennant actually comes from the American baseball flag. And you know that it's that kind of triangular-shaped flag that indicates that the market is consolidating. And this is doing a perfect example of what I would describe as a pennant. Now, 3 is a psychological level. So whenever you hit a big level like this, the market is like, okay, 3, they won't want to buy it at 3 because it seems so much more expensive than 2.9 or 2.95. So 3, they'll take profits. But again, look at how the price action's trading. It's hit the high, it's come off, and it's gone for another go. It's come off again. So now we're getting a stop build up. There's loads of stops that are going to be building up at over 3. So people will short the market and expecting it to go down against one of these big levels. If it can just pop through 3, this will have another surge. And I think the way this is going, given that it's shaken off this whole corrective phase, it's unlikely that it's gone as far as this only to sort of fail just over 3. So I think we're going to look for another move equivalent to this sort of 1 up to 3 move. So I think you could easily be looking at a move to 5 and possibly more. So I think that's looking fantastic. So as long as it doesn't cross back below this 2.46 level, which was the previous high, that should be a really good brick wall of support. So if it comes back to there, that's okay. If it breaks back below it, I'll be like, no, it shouldn't have done that. It should really be holding on to that level for me to maintain a bullish view. Now I'm trying to give this in context of like when I might not speak to you for a little while, and you'll be thinking, well, hang on a minute. You said you were bullish. Where do I parachute out? And that's one of the things that professional traders always do. They're always looking for levels where they're wrong to protect themselves, because otherwise you could be holding something long and it could be going all the way against you, and you really don't want to be doing that. So I'll show you just a very quick, I know it's not crypto, but I'm going to show you a quick chart of the S&P. Now the S&P still looking really bullish, but I think the equity markets are in their final bullish phase. So there will be a correction, and we could have one last push perhaps, or we may even be close to it now. NASDAQ technology stocks still pushing up. We can't short that yet. There's no signal to say we can short it yet, other than that it's very high. But we are close to broadly a correction, because not everything is moving up. It's kind of fragmented, and that's a bad sign. But we've got to wait for those signals. So I'm only pointing that out because if there is a big correction in the equity markets, you might see a broader sell-off, and that might encompass some of the coins as well. So it's worthwhile keeping an eye on those other markets just in case. So we'll look at Matic as well. I think that was that one that you wanted to look at?
Matic's a big token. It wasn't on my list for today.
Okay, let's go to Solana. That was wasn't it? Now this sort of highlights the disparity between Bitcoin and some of these smaller tokens. Like, there's tremendous opportunity. You can't really throw everything in one basket because they're not trading like that. The market really is differentiating. For me, as a price reader, I can't say anything other than this looks bullish. Now, many investors will look at this and say, yeah, the market's too high, and I should have bought it before, and I'll wait for a pullback and all that sort of stuff. And you probably will get a pullback, but this is an upward trend, and that's what the markets. This is what we wait for. We wait for these consolidations. We sit them out sometimes for months, just for this accelerating price action, and therefore we have to jump on it. And these little consolidations give you a chance to jump on, especially when they're short. So this is what I'm expecting. In the other markets. So I was saying, like, you get it like in Cardano, you've got something very similar. So I'm expecting this Cardano to trade in this similar way, where it breaks the high and just keeps going. But this is leading the way higher. So investors are telling us that they like this more than they like the other markets. So I have to like it more, because it's like, this is just the market's opinion. It's not my opinion. It's what the markets are telling me. So, what would tell me that perhaps we should be looking for a correction, or where would we get it? Where would it look bearish? I mean, it looked bearish if it went back below this previous top. So to me, it could come all the way back down here. It still look okay, and then go up. So I think of this as like, if I was going to go on holiday for 3 months, like I'm going to be able to do that, right? Of course not. But if I couldn't see this chart for 3 months, where would my levels be, and what would I expect it to look like? Now, all being well, if there's no reversal patterns and this continues as the chart is unfolding, as long as it doesn't take out this 58 level, I would be expecting this to go at least to 200 and possibly more. So that's a nice trend. And it's, if you look at the rate that it's accelerating, it's gone slowly up and then it's going a little bit faster, which is a good sign. Now, when you get to the end of that move, the market gets like really excited and you get a massive move and then it reverses. And that's called a spike, which hopefully we'll get to see at some point. You know, we can talk through that when it occurs. But at the moment, that's climbing what we call a wall of worry, where investors can start looking at it and going, oh, I'd love to get in, but this feels too high. What you have to do is just say, look, where am I wrong? Once you've decided where you're wrong, don't worry about the price action. You know, just buy it. As long as you've got to know what indicates the market has turned, and there's certain price action patterns that we can't really go into now, but there's certain patterns that you look out for. But as long as the trend is smooth like this, there's no need to fight it. So you wouldn't be going short it either. Don't try and fight the market as it goes up, because you know that's a favorite of new investors who think, whoa, it's too strong, it's got to come down. Well, it might, you know, everything's probability, but I certainly wouldn't be fighting that market. So there were a couple of other ones that you asked me.
Let's take a look at Fantom. Now, Fantom is also a third generation blockchain that has been running really hard. And so we're seeing this, like we talked about on the channel about a month ago in a little bit, that coming soon, the third generation blockchain like not only the chains, but the ecosystems were going to take off. It has happened to play out exactly like that. And Fantom is one of those. Now, one of them I haven't covered a lot specifically. I can't say I know it really well, but I definitely want to look at the charts while we're here together on Fantom.
Sure. Yeah, what was the... I'm really sorry. What was the code?
Let me get the ticker symbol on that. It's FTM.
Okay. So FT... Hang on, let me just clear that. FTM. Okay, Fantom, right? Oh, wow. Okay, I see why you like this. Now, this is great. So this is your Fantom chart, which, look, I am not an expert on all these coins, right? But I love technical analysis. And when I see charts like this, I'm like, I want to see everything. So you tell me what's interesting for you, and I'm going to go and get really excited about this breaking out, because this is a great chart. I've never heard of Fantom, and I wouldn't have known to look at it unless you told me. So I'm grateful for that. But this is really important, because look, we got key resistance here, and the market's come down, had another go, that's failed, come back down in a decent correction. You know, it's a nice correction. This is the sort of correction that I was hoping Bitcoin would do. Thought it would come down, break its low, get a bit of a pullback, and then we go into this bull move. But this is already there. So we're very close to a big round number, 1. And so be slightly careful around these big numbers. But aside from that, the trend is up. You know, the trend is moving up, and it's moving up at a decent rate. So I would look at the previous resistance here as a stop. So I would put a stop level below the previous high there. So that would be my 0.59. I would say on this chart, if it gets below there, then I'd have to rethink what's going on. But otherwise, that's looking good. That's nice acceleration. I expect it to take the high out. And how much could it go? If you look at how much it went down, it'll probably break to the upside by a similar amount. So, you know, I think you're safe to go for at least 0.5 and possibly even 1 if the wind's behind it. So that's looking really good. That's a good shout there, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to cover that now, and then I'll share, well, maybe now is a good time to share with you my thoughts on what is going to happen with the overall market.
Yeah.
Just, it follows, and you probably know this, cryptocurrency follows the 4-year cycle, but it doesn't follow it exactly. And every 4-year cycle is a little bit different, and maybe this one will play out completely different. I don't know. There's some people that believe this one's going to keep going up for 2 reasons. Number one, bigger adoption, more widespread adoption, but secondly, because of the printing of money, not just by the USA, but by so many countries. So we'll see how it plays, because many things should be turning around by now. My guess is we have a blow off, what I call a blow off top, and then we have a big retracement, and that is, many people, when we start having that blow off top, will say we'll never come down from here. but you know that is exactly the sign that it's usually about to. And so what I don't know is if September historically has not been favorable to Bitcoin in general, though these altcoins seem to really be picking up some steam. So maybe Bitcoin does play out kind of sideways, or maybe even retraces some as the altcoins run. But then at some point we have a Bitcoin blow off followed by some more altcoin blow offs before the big retracement. What I can't figure out is if it's going to follow the pattern it did in 2013 or 2017 of Bitcoin really is the only thing we have good data on, going parabolic in November and December of both those cycles, followed by a sharp pullback. Although in the last cycle, Bitcoin, when it did pull back, a lot of that wealth transferred into alts, which then did a massive run, before then starting some sideways trading as well as bigger pullbacks. And so I'm just looking at this cycle better on, or more from, okay, so my guess is we'll have a parabolic move, which transfers a lot of money in. So all of a sudden, it becomes the new thing that everybody's looking at, and money transfers in huge amounts, and we see this huge blow off top, which is when it really gets exciting. And we're starting to see some moves, some parabolic moves, like what we just saw in Solana. Fantom, if it breaks this level, like you said, if you look at the bigger trend, it's actually a parabola going way back there to March, and then it could go crazy, as well as there's some smaller cap ones I wanted to cover as well, but I wanted to first start with the third generation blockchain gems like Solana, Cardano, and Fantom, because they're all kind of running together. Do you mind if we look at some other ones?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we look at Wanchain. Wanchain is one I've been a big fan of. And I feel like their technology, that's WAN, their technology is amazing. Their marketing lags behind their technology, so they've had a hard time catching on. But I'd love your feel on the price action and what you're seeing.
Yeah, this is, until this little breakout we've just got here, this is definitely a laggard. This area here is a double top. So this ended this phase of this bullish phase. So we've got a double top here, and until it breaks over that the trigger point, this trigger for the double top, let me just explain what I mean by that. A double top isn't a trend ending signal, so it means this is time to get out, or get out of your longs, or maybe even go short. So traders would have shorted it at this level here, which is 1.11. Now it's broken lower and hit support, and now it's coming right back up to retest that level. So this is what I call a pivotal level, because if it can get over that level, then we would say that's a really good sign, and it should work its way back up to a new high. If it can do that, then the next step is it's going to go back up to the all-time high. So it's one step at a time, but this has moved extremely fast. So we've had that little consolidation I was talking about in Cardano, and it's made a similar pattern, and it's exploded through it. So there's a lot of momentum that should really push it through that level. So I'd be watching it day by day. Now, if you wanted to take a sort of 70-30 type of trade as opposed to a 90-10, I'd say, yeah, I would be more likely to go long than short at this point, just because it's got this sharp move behind it. But I would really prefer to see it take this level out here, this trigger point, because that is very strong. You can see it was resistance here and it's support here, so it means the market likes to trade around there. So for it to get a bit sticky at this level wouldn't be like totally unwarranted. So yeah, bullish, certainly a lot more bullish than it was here, but just play it one step at a time. But if it can take that out, then it will look very interesting.
And a lot of my personal Wanchain holdings go way back to 2019, 2020, which I don't usually trade the swings. I just buy and hold projects with great technology. But I love understanding the technical analysis side better, so that sometimes I know when I am wrong on a bigger route, and I know just to get out. But Yeah, this one I've been, a fan of since, oh goodness, all the way back to 2018, though I didn't start loading up on it till it broke down to about $2. I bought my first amount, but I loaded up really large amounts during the crypto winter, which we see this big retracement where it got ridiculously cheap at certain points.
Well, this is where I would defer to your knowledge about what's behind the core, because if I'd seen that, I wouldn't have been in it. I would have been out of that, because to me that's like, I don't know where it's going to stop. And what I do know is that there are people like you out there who know when the difference between something that's going to go to zero and something that's a screaming opportunity. And the fact that you were holding it suggests that, this was a blowout bottom in the sense that the market collapsed, hit a low, and then recovered. So if you can trade it two ways. You can either understand the technology, believe in it long term, or how I would do it, I say, look, I haven't got the time to learn about every single coin with all the markets that I look at as well. So I prefer to say, if it's looking bullish technically, I'd much prefer to buy it rather than wonder whether I've bought a technology that doesn't necessarily work. But it's really interesting to get your perspective on how you would hold on to something like this. So I would ask you a question. Where would you think of buying more, given that you've held on to it? Would you add to your position, or are you just going to hold it at this point?
I'm heavy on this. This is, I would say it's my second largest altcoin holding. It isn't any longer because I had some other ones take off. So the team behind this, the technology, they build a lot of cross-chain bridges between all the major chains, and they continue connecting them up. But they're really strong developers. Marketing isn't their strength. And so they have some of the best tech out there. What they don't have is public awareness of the best tech, that's usually when you find gems, right? Yeah. Something that has something amazing is just not publicly known yet. And that's when you tend to catch bigger swings. And so even on the pullback, if you look at this chart in the massive pullback, everything pulled back during that time by similar proportions. Right. And even when it dipped all the way down there, Cardano itself was all the way down there in that same trench. Cardano has since reversed out of that trench to much higher numbers and broke its previous all-time highs. Wanchain has not broken its previous all-time highs. So I'm looking forward to that. My guess is it will, and that's a big swing from here because trading right about $1, its previous all-time high was close to $10. From here, that's a 10x. If it hits that, bounces off a couple times, then breaks through it, that's really positive for those that are holding it.
Yeah, that's a very good point actually you make there, because I'm using a log chart, which basically means that it puts the move into percentage perspective, as it were, because obviously if something goes from 1 to 2, it's doubled. If something goes from 5 to 10, it's doubled. So the log chart will put that in perspective. So I automatically use log charts. But that's very interesting. Did you want me to look at one of the other coins that we mentioned?
Yes, I would love to. Let's look at Ecomi. Yeah. My viewers know I love this, and I especially like to buy I buy when it's boring. Yeah. Because I look for strong projects with great fundamentals where people lose hope in it and they're just get impatient, right? As Warren Buffett said, investing is a process by which money changes hands from the impatient to the patient. And I've seen that absolutely be true. And so what I do is when I'm seeing good retracements, that's when I stock up. And then I wait till all of a sudden they're in the news cycle again. And it goes crazy. And it's funny, my general rule of thumb is if I look at like YouTube and the crypto YouTube and I'm seeing like 10 channels covering this token, that means that's at least exit point 1.
Right.
And so
you're
this one has been... Yeah, exactly. So when it enters the hype cycle, that for me that's a take profit zone, and then it's funny. Just give it a few months and it exits the hype cycle. People kind of move on and forget about it. And even if it's got some of the strongest fundamentals out there or future things lining up for it, people forget about it because there's nothing happening with the price action. People tend to chase moving gains And so I'm more of a 1 to 5 or 6 month holder, maybe sometimes 12 months, sometimes 2 years. And so this one I'm a big fan of. And I started buying the pullback at 0.75 cents. I put a little bit in timidly, and then at 0.55 cents I bought some more. And then as it got really cheap, I just loaded up on it.
Well, the interesting thing with this chart here is that it is forming what we call an inverse head and shoulders from what I can see. So what that means is that this downward trend is ending, potentially ending, because it's not actually fully completed the pattern yet, but it's exhibiting all the signs of it wanting to do that. And I've drawn this horizontal line in, which is on this chart, it's at 0.0047. And that's the level that I think it will trade to. Then if it takes that out, we're off to the races. Then we're going to see a big move. But I like, you see the way this is triangular? I love markets when they go into this like triangular phase, because it means that they're winding up for a move. And we've had the sharp move, the correction, and now this will move into a big trend of some kind. It's just a question of when it breaks out. And so we could still be sitting in a range for a little while longer, maybe even a month or two. But ultimately, this has to break out. Now, if it fails, it's going to take this low out. That would be a bit of a disappointment. But this to me looks like it's reversing. And when I've seen markets like this reverse, they usually trade at least the height of the pattern to the upside. So I think there's the speculator side of me would say that's actually worth getting now before it starts to get exciting, before other people start to get on board. But it's not like some of the other coins where they're already trending, they're already taking the high out. This is like an early trade where you'd start nibbling at it, and then if it breaks up again, you buy a bit more. But then we get really excited when this resistance point here, when that gets taken out, that's where you're really confirmed. So again, like trading is about money management as well. It's about it's very often not 100% long, 100% short or neutral. It's like, this looks interesting. I want to buy a little bit of this here and see how it trades. Oh yeah, it's trading really well. I'm going to get some more. And the more the market confirms that you're right, the more you should be looking to buy. And if it does the opposite, you should be careful unless you've got some really, good insight into
inside information. Yeah. What's fun about this sphere is there's so much transparency is as far as if you just listen to the information they're putting out there. And what's funny is this market is confirming, this wind up is confirming the fundamentals as well. And the fundamentals are this. One, they made a disastrous decision 3 years ago that seemed like a very smart decision at the time to move away from the Ethereum chain to kind of a side chain called GoChain. And the transaction fees are way lower, as well as the speeds are way higher.
Oh, right.
Seemed like it would be a great move, but GoChain never really caught on. And so one of the troubles they're having, even though the market cap on this and the trading volume is fairly high in this token, they're really only on a few minor exchanges, because in order to be on those exchanges, they have to be running an instance of a GoChain node. And so that's held them back tons, because Binance would have likely already listed them for sure, maybe even Coinbase, and then they would have much broader appeal. So those things are getting rectified in the background. So what you're having is a lot of people that were new jumped in when it traded up to all the way to 1.4 cents because they were chasing price action, and they like the story behind this. They do make some of the most amazing NFTs of anyone in the space. They've got licenses with Marvel, they've got licenses with DC, like Batman, and some of the biggest licenses out there. And so they're doing all the right things as a company. Their token isn't completely related to their company's success, but it is highly correlated, except for the disastrous decision to be on GoChain. Now, they've been working on it for 4 or 5 months, moving it back to the Ethereum chain, but then a side chain called Immutable X. And when they complete that, all of a sudden you'll be able to move the NFTs over to, say, the OpenSea marketplace. and you'll be able to trade them on a marketplace where all the NFT action is happening, because right now you can only trade them within their app that's on the phone. And so you might be ETH rich and have $100,000 of Ethereum. In order to then buy the collectibles by Ecomi, you then have to take that money to a fiat off-ramp, then re-ramp it in directly to Ecomi's app Vivi in order to buy anything. So this is what's holding them back. This is what's making the downtrend, people lose faith in the token. Meanwhile, as they rectify this on the background, all of a sudden people are going to be like, oh my gosh, their collectibles are tradable here, and you'll see the price of those collectibles take off. It will bring new attention to the token as well, and all of a sudden faith will be restored, and the price, my guess is, will skyrocket, because they do have some of the best NFTs in the whole space.
Wow, that sounds amazing. You've convinced me anyway.
Right, that's what I love, is finding these gems. And so what I wish I was stronger on is technical analysis and understanding everything the chart's telling me. And that's why during the crypto winter I took some more time to understand reading charts better, but I can't say I'm amazing at it. But I can say that you're amazing at it. So I love you joining the audience here and sharing with us what you're looking at and how you're looking at it. Do you mind if we look at another one? Let's see. These are three ones that we've followed, and they've been on a big retracement, and they've been kind of at a rounded bottom. So that Splyt, let's look at the first one. Splyt,
yeah,
their ticker symbol is SHOPX. Okay, yes, this.
Yeah. So this is actually against Bitcoin, which is that okay, or would you rather that against the US dollar?
I prefer USD if the chart is able to find that.
Yeah, let's see if we can get that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now this is not as bullish as some of the other markets that we've looked at. This is kind of wounded and limping along and trying to recover. So this is like, it's got to try harder before we get excited about it. And where I think this would be more interesting is if it could get over this previous resistance. Now, I don't know what happened there. There was obviously a lot of activity because it went straight up and then straight down again, which is unusual. You don't normally see that. You sometimes see it when there's been a mistake on the chart and whatever price was put there was wrong, and it sort of reverses out and you get this odd thing. But that's pretty odd. I don't know why that's done that. This is a smooth downward trend. This was continuing down. I would have expected it to be bearish all the way along here. But then we've got that. So question mark, what's that all about? So I'd like it to put that behind it, is what I'm saying there. That's why I'm focusing so much on this previous move, because clearly there was some sort of announcement and then it was decided that it was really bad. So the rate at which this is recovering is still very slow. But there's time for it to, it's still there, right? It's at least, it's not in a consistent downward trend. At least it's not like plunging into new lows. So I like that. But I would have a watching brief on that rather than jumping in with both feet, because it's still got a bit more work to do before I could get excited. And at this 0.3 level, it's failed twice. It's actually come off quite aggressively from that 0.3. So if you were to say, well, look, you got 10 units to trade, how much would you put in there? I'd say a couple of units if it took out 0.3, because that's not a bad level for it to have broken. And then if it can take out this 0.42 around there and close over it, then I'd say, yeah, a couple more. That would be good. And then I'd examine how quickly it's doing it and making sure that it's moving with the rest of the market, depending on what everything else is doing. So it could be good, but I think I'd need to wait a little bit longer.
Yeah. Let me share with you kind of, all three of these fall in the same category, and I think part of the reason they have this big sell-off is the way their tokenomics are structured. See, the reason there's not much history in this is because it recently came out. When it came out, one of the new tokenomics setups that they use for a lot of projects as they come out is to create a huge pump right off the beginning so it kind of gets some awareness. And so they squeeze down the initial market cap really low by even the pre-sale investors and even those receiving some tokens at the initial DEX offering receive such a small amount of their initial tokens. So then supply is way lower than demand, and it creates this rocket. And this chart only it didn't really catch the upside because there was a huge swing from really low all the way up to here. And it's just catching the downside. But during this downtime, then pre-sales investors continue to get their tokens unlocked. And what do? Oh my gosh, it's going down. They sell it, which further brings it down. Right, but eventually this rounded bottom, there's stronger hands picking up this low, realizing that eventually the pre-sale investors have received all of their allocations. There's no more for them to get and then dump right into the market. So the only people still holding are the ones that have picked it up at these lower prices, and then all of a sudden you usually see some steep recoveries. So when exactly that steep recovery happens, you don't always know, and it's hard to tell where the bottom is. Like many traders call it, it's like trying to catch a falling knife, and you usually get cut. And so what I look for in these type of tokenomic situations is, where does the bottom start to get rounded?
Recording stopped.
Oops. Oh, it switched over. I think it ended the meeting. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Thank you for your patience.
That information was so good, it crashed my Zoom. It was like it couldn't take it.
Right. So that's what's the tokenomics. Part of what causes the pump, and then it causes the dump that follows. And so what I do is knowing how those structures were setting up, I've been picking it up, I think on this one since about 0.30 cents, but then the entire market took a dump since then. So at 30 cents I was picking up, and I continue to pick up more while it was further down. And then we're starting to see it come out of that downward movement and trying to put some pressure up. But now there's not as much pressure from some of the token releases, and eventually that pressure will completely end on those token releases, and that takes away a lot of the selling pressure.
Amazing. That's so interesting.
So that, why don't we move on to another one that the chart probably doesn't look all too different from this, because the setup on the token structure and the release time was very similar, and that is AIOZ. That's AIOZ.
AIOZ. Okay. There we go. Against the US dollar. Oh, right. Okay. So this is similar. Absolutely right. This is similar. It's had a downward trend, and the structure of how it's rallying is not very quick. It needs to do a bit more work again before we can get excited, but there are levels where we can get excited. So at least then this is trying to move higher, but I would like to see a bit more trend acceleration, because it would be too easy for this to be going sideways or even downwards by the time, in a month or two's time. So this is working its way off the low, but it's still got a bit more work for it to do before I could get excited. Now the level, again, I like to put in levels where I think, well, if it can take that out, I'd be really interested. And that's around 0.64, 0.65 basically. So if it can get through 0.65, I think it would look a lot more like some of the other coins. There is a game that many people play when they look at technical analysis. They start inventing patterns. There could be a head and shoulders pattern, early stage forming here, but we can't invent patterns. We've got to let the market tell us what's there. So you've got to be very careful about doing things like that. So I'm sort of imagining there is a reversal pattern there, and then thinking that's too early for that. So step carefully with this one, I would say. It's at least it's moving up with the other coins, which I think is a positive sign. And again, if I had the 10 units, I might put one in just because it's moving up. But if I had to choose between this and something else, I'd choose something else for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other one that's going to follow, similar to this, is DOWS, Shadows, DOWS, the ticker symbol. So
okay, is that this one? Yeah.
Yes. Funny how they're all playing out very similar, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And looking, I mean, look, this is to me, I go long and short. You know, when I was a trader in the bank, we look for, professional traders look for both types of opportunity, not just long opportunities. So this is a great opportunity, as well as, you know, it going inverse the other way. But I can understand with these coins, you've got an asymmetric risk, because they can only go to zero. That's your maximum downside, but your upside's massive. Now, having said that, this is doing okay. This has made a double bottom. Now, a double bottom is when it makes a low, rallies, makes another low, and rallies. And at this point here would have been a buy point. And it's okay for the market to come back for a retest. What isn't okay is if it gets much below here. If it gets a little bit too far below here, we start to go, momentum's gone, and I'm not happy with it. So what I would do is, if it's going to trend, then I would take a trend line that marks off all the lows. You see these lows, 1, 2, 3, it's hit perfectly. I would draw that line in and say, okay, 1 unit, I will hold 1 unit as long as that line doesn't break. And that will be my, if it breaks that line, I get out. Otherwise, okay, we can, you know, take a small position, a little nibble, because it's trying to go up. But it's, again, not as good as some of the other charts. And if I had to choose, I would still be, you know, favoring some of the more bullish looking charts that are further along the way.
Yeah, what's funny is I love these type of charts. I love it when it's down like this, because I'm patient and I do not trade on margin, and I'm okay to hold for longer swings of time. So when I see this kind of stuff and they go way down, see, these are all three of these last ones are on the Polkadot ecosystem, and Polkadot ecosystem has been outside of the hype cycle for a while. So within the greater cryptocurrency thing, it kind of trends in dialogues or narratives. So right now it's NFT and gaming narrative, but then it's moving to third generation blockchains, which first has really hit with Cardano and Fantom and Solana, and a few of those have been taking off, but it hasn't moved over to Polkadot. It swung back to here, but back when these launched, they was right in the middle of the Polkadot hype cycle, and so you saw Polkadot's price go up and everything related to it as well. Then a bigger pullback, and it then shifts around to that narrative, and it takes off and goes crazy. And so I love these gems that nobody's talking about, that I've forgotten about, as long as I feel like the team, or there's something about it inside the narrative that it's in that can do well, and stock up while it's cheap. And then as it goes crazy and hits inside the narrative, I sell. But this is why I never trade these on any kind of margin, because you just don't know when that narrative is exactly going to come back. And until it does, you're stuck holding. I mean, sometimes you can roll out of it into something that you feel a little bit more sure about. Like we went over the Ecomi chart, and I'm very bullish on not just the chart is looking good, but the fundamentals behind it of what could push it to break up rather than breaking down. And we don't know the exact release date of when they're going to have some things fixed behind it. It could be 10 days from now. It could be 50 days or 60 days from now. We don't know, but it feels like it's about time that those things will be announced and changed. And when it does, we're looking for probably a really big takeoff from here.
Amazing.
That's my thought. We probably should. I appreciate all your time. We're going on about an hour on this video, and I've heard that YouTube punishes us if we break an hour.
Right.
Hopefully our audience has been enjoying this, because I know I have been. I've loved your time, and I would love to do this on a more regular basis if you're cool with that.
Yeah, it's been really fantastic. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for inviting me on. And I love your take on what's going on behind the charts as well. So really interesting, and just thank you for inviting me on. And I'd love to come back whenever you'd like me to come. So
yeah, we very much appreciate DeFinity for allowing us to borrow you and bring you on. It was fantastic of them to do that, so thank you. And I want to thank one of our sponsors for this month, and that's Ether Cards. If you haven't checked them out, you go to ether.cards, check out their artwork on their alpha and their OG cards. It's amazing. So we only took on this sponsor, though we've had 150 requests. We've said no to everyone, Intel Ether cards, and we're starting to get some offers from other sponsors that are along the level that I like, because pretty much for a sponsorship I need them to be a 9 or a 10 out of 10 as far as how much I like them, and definitely Ether cards is in that 10 out of 10 side. So we decided to accept them as a sponsor, and really impressed with what they're doing, and I look forward to bringing you more information on what they're doing. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you, Paul, for joining us, and appreciate the audience for being here as well.
Thank you. All the best.
Came into the space chasing all of the games, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you're good. Was taught to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I missed. Cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they